Did you know your VO2 max, your body's ability to take in, transport, and use oxygen, is one of the strongest predictors of how long you'll live? A major 2018 study published in JAMA found that low cardiorespiratory fitness was associated with a higher risk of death than many traditional risk factors people obsess over, including smoking, obesity, and high blood pressure. And another large body of research summarized in The Lancet shows that improving aerobic capacity by even a small amount can significantly reduce all-cause mortality risk, which means your conditioning is not just a nice to have, it is a health and longevity multiplier. Here's the best part. VO2 max is trainable. And when you improve it, you do not just become better at cardio. You improve your ability to burn fat efficiently, recover faster, train more consistently, and maintain physical independence as you age. Today, I'm gonna show you what conditioning actually is and what it is not, why VO2 max is the cornerstone of both fat loss and longevity, how heart rate zones, interval training, and strength training fit together, and then I'll give you 3 simple effective conditioning routines you can start using right now with clear intention and clear progression. What conditioning is and what it isn't. When most people hear the word conditioning, they picture one of 2 things: long cardio sessions that feel never-ending, or some brutal workout when you're on the floor questioning your life choices. But real conditioning is not about suffering, and it is not about doing random hard things until you are exhausted. Conditioning is your body's ability to produce effort, sustain effort, and recover from effort. That means it is not only about how hard you can go, but also about how efficiently your body can repeat work, recover between work bouts, and tolerate stress without breaking down. Conditioning improves how your heart and lungs deliver oxygen, how your muscles use that oxygen, and how quickly your nervous system can turn on and off between efforts. That has direct carryover into fat loss because your body becomes better at using fat as fuel and you recover better so you can train consistently. It also has a direct carryover into longevity because it improves cardiovascular health, metabolic health, and your ability to keep moving well as you age. Conditioning is not just burning calories. Conditioning is not just going hard every day. And conditioning is also not testing how long you can survive discomfort without a plan. At the center of all of this is VO2 max. VO2 max, the cornerstone. VO2 max is a measure of how much oxygen your body can use during exercise. It reflects how well your heart can pump blood, how well your lungs can bring in oxygen, and how efficiently your body can transport oxygen, and how well your muscles can use that oxygen to produce energy. VO2 max is not a measure of willpower. It is not a measure of how sweaty you get. It is not something only elite athletes should care about. It is simply one of the clearest indicators of how efficiently your body runs under physical stress. And that matters for everyone. VO2 max matters for fat loss because the better your body is at using oxygen, the better it becomes at producing energy in a more efficient way. That efficiency supports better fat oxidation, better recovery, and better consistency, which are the real drivers of sustainable body composition change. VO2 max matters for longevity because higher cardiorespiratory fitness is consistently associated with lower risk of cardiovascular disease and lower all-cause mortality. In plain English, a higher VO2 max generally means your body has more engine capacity and you have more physical reserve as you age. But here's the problem. Why people struggle with conditioning. Most people do not struggle because they are lazy. They struggle because they don't understand what the system they are training for and they apply effort without intention. A common mistake is living in the middle intensity zone all the time. People are always tired, always sweating, always pushing kind of hard, but they're not improving the system that matters most. That usually leads to stalled fat loss, poor recovery, frustration, and eventually burnout. The solution is not doing more random hard work. The solution is structuring conditioning with clear goals so your body actually adapts. Let's talk about how conditioning actually works, starting with target heart rate zones. Heart rate zones are simply ranges that help you understand how hard your cardiovascular system is working. You do not need to obsess over exact numbers, but you do need to understand the purpose of each zone so you're not just guessing. Here's how to find your estimated maximum heart rate. A simple estimate is 220 minus your age. This is not perfect, but it isn't good enough to guide your training and keep you consistent. Once you have that number, you can estimate zones using percentages. Zone 2 is your aerobic base. This is usually around 60 to 70% of your estimated maximum heart rate. You should be able to speak in full sentences. You're breathing more than normal, but you're not gasping. You could hold that effort for a long, extended period of time. Think walking at an incline, stairs, light jogs, cycling. Zone 2 improves your aerobic base by building more efficient mitochondria, which are the structures inside your cells that produce energy. When mitochondria are healthier and more efficient, your body becomes better at using fat as fuel, and your heart and blood vessels become more efficient at delivering oxygen. This matters for fat loss because it improves metabolic flexibility, meaning you can access fat as an energy source more easily instead of feeling like you constantly need sugar or stimulants to function. And this matters for longevity because a strong aerobic base is closely linked to cardiovascular health, better blood pressure regulation, better glucose management, and better resilience as you age. Zone 3 typically falls around 70 to 80% of your estimated maximum heart rate. You can speak in short phrases, but holding a full conversation feels uncomfortable. You're breathing hard enough that you feel like you are working, but not hard enough that you are forced to stop quickly. Zone 3 is where most people unintentionally live. It feels productive because it is uncomfortable, sweaty, and mentally demanding, but it does not have a clear training purpose when done too often. People end up here because they think harder is always better, or because they are afraid that zone 2 feels too easy. And true high intensity feels intimidating. This zone becomes the default when people jog every workout, take short rests between strength exercises, or turn every session into a moderate grind without intention. Zone 3 does provide some cardiovascular stimulus, but it does not maximize aerobic base development like zone 2, and it does not significantly improve VO2 max or anaerobic capacity like zones 4 and 5. In other words, it gives you some benefit, but not enough benefit to justify living there all the time. Training in zone 3 repeatedly creates a lot of fatigue without proportional return. It increases stress hormones, makes recovery harder, and often interferes with strength training quality. Over time, this can make fat loss harder, not easier, because your body is constantly stressed but never truly adapting. You end up burning energy during workouts but feeling drained the rest of the day, which often leads to stalled progress and inconsistent training. Chronically training in this middle zone can reduce recovery capacity and increase wear and tear without meaningfully improving VO2 max or aerobic efficiency. Longevity is not about constantly feeling exhausted. It's about building reserve capacity. And zone 3 does very little to build reserve when it dominates your training. Here's how to use zone 3 appropriately. Zone 3 is not evil. It just needs to be used sparingly and intentionally. It can show up occasionally in longer conditioning sessions, sport-specific workouts, or transitions between zones, but it should not be the foundation of your conditioning program. For most people, better results come from a polarized approach. Spend more time in zone 2, where you are building aerobic efficiency and recovery capacity. Spend limited intentional time in zones 4 and 5, where you are improving VO2 max, power, and high output capacity. Avoid living in zone 3 by default. When you stop living in the gray zone, conditioning suddenly starts working again. Zones 4 to 5, this is high intensity and anaerobic. These zones usually fall around 80 to 90% of your estimated maximum heart rate. You can only speak a few words at a time, if that. Conversation is not realistic. Your breathing is heavy and fast, and effort and focus cannot be sustained for long. High intensity work improves VO2 max and trains your body to tolerate and recover from short, intense efforts. It also recruits more fast twitch muscle fibers. Fast twitch muscle fibers are the muscle fibers responsible for speed, power, and high output movements. These fibers are metabolically demanding and they decline faster with age if you never train them. That matters for longevity because preserving speed and power is a major factor in preventing frailty, falls, and loss of independence as you get older. And it matters for fat loss because training these fibers creates higher energy demand, improves glucose regulation, and supports muscle preservation while you're trying to lean out. Now that heart rate zones make sense, let's move on to interval training. Interval training works because it targets specific energy systems with intention. During short, intense efforts, you are primarily training the anaerobic system, which is the system responsible for maximum output work. Here is the key that most people get wrong. True max output anaerobic work cannot last longer than about 30 seconds. After that point, your body needs more oxygen to keep going, which means output drops. So if you think you're going all out for 60 to 90 seconds, what you are really doing is pacing. You are not training max output. You're just training discomfort tolerance. If you want intervals to actually work, your work periods need to be short enough that you can produce real intensity, and your rest periods need to be long enough that you can recover and repeat that intensity. A clear way to think about it is this. You want short bursts that are truly hard, followed by recovery that allows you to do another burst at nearly the same quality. Research summarized in journals like Sports Medicine and the Journal of Physiology supports that high intensity interval training can improve VO2 max and metabolic health efficiently when it is done with adequate recovery and real intensity. And strength training as conditioning. Strength training can absolutely be conditioning, but only when you understand what you are trying to train. Traditional strength training, where you take full rest between heavy sets, is mainly about building strength and muscle. That is valuable and should stay in your program. But strength training becomes conditioning when you intentionally structure it to challenge your ability to produce repeated effort with limited rest while maintaining good technique. In other words, you're using strength exercises to train your muscles and your cardiovascular system at the same time, because your heart rate stays elevated and your body has to learn how to recover quickly between efforts. This matters because many people approach fat loss like it is only about burning calories during a workout. But sustainable fat loss is mostly about improving your body's ability to manage energy and recover so you can train consistently and keep muscle. Strength-based conditioning supports fat loss in a few important ways. First, it helps you preserve and build lean muscle tissues. Muscle tissue is metabolically active, meaning it requires energy to maintain. You burn more calories just to have it. When you carry more muscle, your body generally uses more energy at rest, and you have more capacity to tolerate food intake without gaining fat as easily. Second, strength-based conditioning improves insulin sensitivity, which means your body becomes better at storing carbohydrates in muscle and using them for training rather than storing them as fat. Third, it makes your workouts more efficient, because you are training strength and stamina together in a controlled way. Strength-based conditioning matters for longevity because strength is one of the most protective physical qualities you can build. Strength supports joint integrity, bone density, posture, and functional independence. It also helps you stay resilient to injury. When strength work is paired with conditioning structure, you're not only building the ability to lift things, you are building the ability to lift things when you are tired, recover, and keep going. And that is real life fitness. The mistake people make is turning strength-based conditioning into sloppy cardio. If your form collapses and your movement quality disappears, you are no longer training strength or conditioning effectively. You're just practicing bad mechanics at a high heart rate. The goal is controlled, repeatable work that you can measure and improve. So here are the most effective conditioning routines. These 3 routines cover agility and coordination, speed and power, and stamina. They are simple enough for beginners, scalable enough for advanced trainees, and structured enough that you can actually track progress. Routine 1, agility and coordination. Lateral shuffle. This routine trains your ability to control your body when changing direction and improves coordination and reaction time. These qualities protect your joints and help prevent injuries, and they also support longevity because the ability to deaccelerate and move quickly is strongly tied to fall prevention and independence as we age. Here's how to do it. You're going to shuffle side to side while keeping your knees softly bent, your hips back slightly, and your feet staying under control, pointed straight forward, no rotation. Shuffle for 10 to 20 seconds with focus on clean footwork and stable knees. Rest for 40 to 60 seconds so you feel ready to repeat with similar quality. Repeat 4 to 6 rounds. How to progress it. You can add a reaction cue, which means either a partner calls left, right, or middle. You can also progress by increasing speed without sacrificing control, and later you can reduce rest slightly as your recovery improves. The most common mistake is turning this into sloppy cardio. Another mistake is letting the knees cave inward or crossing the feet, which defeats the purpose because you are no longer training control and deacceleration. Do this 1 to 2 times per week or at the end of your strength workout. Routine 2, speed and power, short sprints or power bursts. Speed and power are built through high quality, high intensity efforts. Power is the ability to produce force quickly, and that quality declines rapidly with age if you do not train it. Preserving power supports longevity because it helps you move quickly when you need to catch yourself if you trip and maintain athletic capacity. It also supports fat loss because training power recruits high threshold muscle fibers and creates a strong training stimulus without needing long workouts. Here's how to do it. You can do this outside, on a hill, on a treadmill with incline, or on a bike, or rower if you need a low impact option. Sprint hard as you can for 6 to 20 seconds and stop while you still have a good output. Rest for 60 to 120 seconds or until your breathing calms down enough that you can go hard again. You can talk in full sentences. Repeat for 4 to 8 total sprints. You progress this by adding one sprint over time, by slightly increasing speed, or by shortening the rest only after you keep output consistent across all efforts. Watch your heart rate go to zone 4 or 5 and then back down. The biggest mistakes are going too long, which turns into something else, and resting too little, which causes output to drop and turns power training into tired training. Yes, your heart rate will go up. That's not what we want. Do this 1 time a week. And routine 3, stamina. 3 move timed conditioning circuit, or EMOM style. This routine builds stamina by training your ability to do repeated work, recover quickly, and keep your technique under control. This is the kind of conditioning that translates directly into daily life and into fat loss because it increases your work capacity and your ability to train consistently without feeling destroyed. EMOM, every minute on the minute. Here's how to do it. You'll cycle through 3 to 5 movements. Each movement gets 1 minute. Your goal is to complete a set number of repetitions with good form, then using the remaining time in the minute to breathe and recover before the next movement. Minute 1, perform a squat movement for a manageable number of reps, like 10. Use the remainder of the minute to rest. Minute 2, perform a push-up or pull movement for a manageable number of reps. Minute 3, perform a hinge movement or a conditioning movement for a manageable number of reps. Repeat this 3 to 5-minute cycle until you reach 10 to 15 total minutes. Here's how to progress it. You can progress by adding a few repetitions or an additional exercise, by using slightly more weight or improving your breathing so you recover faster within each minute. The key is that your form stays consistent and your work stays repeatable. The most common mistake is rushing and losing technique just because the timer's going, because people want to win the minute. The goal is not to finish as fast as possible. The goal is to produce consistent work and use the remaining seconds to recover so the next round stays clean. Do this 1 to 2 times per week or after a strength session. Conditioning is not punishment. Conditioning is preparation. When you train conditioning correctly, you are improving VO2 max, building an aerobic base, preserving power and fast twitch capacity, and building work capacity through structured strength conditioning. All of those things support fat loss because they improve how your body uses fuel and how consistently you can train. All of those things support longevity because they protect your heart, your metabolism, and your independence. You don't need chaos. You need clarity and intention and progression. So comment below and tell me, what part of conditioning do you struggle with most right now? Stamina, speed, or recovery? And then check out my next video on the best compound exercises for building muscle and losing fat, because strength and conditioning work best when they are trained together.